All right, we are back with another special edition for you. A special guest is a world-renowned lead vocalist, songwriter, producer, and the founder of Ronnie Montrose Remembered. Please welcome Keith St. John.
Thank you, Jay. What's
Keith,
going on,
look at
man?
that shirt, the red and white.
Well, I've been we're leading up to this Ronnie Montrose Remembered event, and I thought it made sense to wear a different shirt from each year, each day,
There
and
you
kind of
go.
like honor each group of players because there were a lot of similar players from year to year, and but different ones too each year, and I loved every one of them.
I
So
know,
yeah.
man. How many years have you done? Which is this edition here?
I believe, if I haven't even thought about this really, if you can believe that, but I believe this is the ninth year we've done it.
Okay.
So we took a little break during COVID-19, or whatever that was called, and but other than that, we're back strong. So
Well, of course, you have great history with Ronnie, and we're celebrating one Ronald Douglas Montrose, born November 29th, 47, passed March 3rd, 2012. And between the group Montrose and Gamma and Solo's got quite a history. And I know you were blessed to front his band on several occasions, many years, some great albums and recordings. And I remember talking to Ronnie at NAMM, and I don't know what year that was. I don't know if that was his last year he was at NAMM. It definitely felt like it was about, 15, 16 years ago or something. But I
sounds
know
about
this,
right.
yeah, I know this is heartfelt. And of course, most of us, Ronnie came on our radar, with the self-titled Montrose album, with Sammy Hagar and Bill Church and Denny Carmassi, and coming right out of the Edgar Winter Group, which was amazing because I remember growing up across the country. I was living in Ohio at the time,
Yeah,
and Free Ride and Frankenstein, they were like the biggest songs of the year, and they only come out at night was like the number one album. And I remember seeing all the ads for them coming through on tour. And next thing you know, Ronnie walks from that after, previously working with Van Morrison and everything, and
that's
he's
right.
uh, he's all set to make what some people call, America's answer to Led Zeppelin, or some of us refer to the Blueprint, or Van Halen and what came after. And when did it first come on your radar? When did you first hear that debut Montrose album yourself?
Well, growing up out on Long Island, out east, it wasn't as big as it was on the West Coast. Montrose was a big West Side of the U.S. phenomenon, and fairly well known in the diehard rock circles. Hard rock and heavy metal they called it back then. This stuff wasn't heavy metal. This stuff was hard rock at best, and to my ear anyway. But if you were kind of more of an aficionado, you probably had that first Montrose record. Whereas if you lived anywhere in California at that time, it was everywhere. And so when I was just randomly moved out to LA because of a record I was working on, actually was working on one in New York and then got bumped out to LA to do another project. Just kind of my first taste in the music industry. Um, I kind of more got in tune with what was going on out here. I discovered that first Montrose record. Um, but surprisingly, when I first met Ronnie, it didn't really occur to me, exactly um, what this guy's history was and how big it really was, I guess is what I want to say. Um, and when he asked me to sing in the new version of Montrose that he wanted to put together, I was happy that he made that offer, and I really loved the guy's playing because we were writing songs together and just working together
Sure.
on new stuff because that's how I met him. I met him as a guy who was looking for a singer who wanted to write some new stuff with. A session player that worked on an album I was working on said, "Hey, you got to meet this guy. He really needs to hear your voice because he's looking to start a new thing." And I'm like, "Great." And I checked it out, and he came over to my house. I came over to his house. We started writing songs, and that was going great. And it was 6 months to a year before he said, "Hey, man, I got this offer to put another Montrose band. I want to give you these records. Check these out, and Keith, see if you want to sing on this stuff," kind of a thing. And I thought the stuff was great, and it just sort of worked with my voice. I could just do what I do. Because that's always how it's kind of been. It's like, if I could do my thing and it works, I'm happy.
Yeah.
And because otherwise, in the long run, it's just going to be a struggle, trying to put on somebody else's shoes. But I kind of did the stuff my way, and the fans really responded to it, and they liked it. And then once we started doing live shows, and I saw how big it was, only then did I realize, the magnitude of what I had gotten into. And the more I got to know Ronnie, the more he was letting me in on his whole past history. And we'd talk about, when he was a young strapping buck, it's showing up in Haight-Ashbury, off the boat from Colorado.
Yeah.
And, we got some studio work out there. And as you mentioned, his first sort of foray into being in a national act was with Van Morrison. Yeah. And I'll tell them the way that happened. The way that happened is Ronnie, in addition to being kind of a lot of guys in his shoes who kind of were pioneers of things, probably a lot of them were like OCD, ADD, like really deep thinkers, and really detailed kind of people. And Ronnie was like that. And one thing he was really good at, as well as electronics and especially guitar electronics, he was good at just general carpentry. So he got a job working for Bill Graham for a while around the Fillmore, and he used to be Bill's kind of almost fix-it guy, right? And Bill would, he'd let Ronnie's band, open up for national acts coming through there, which, as you know, and everybody out there knows, is everybody. God. Everybody came through the Fillmore back in the day.
Fillmore West was like a who's who of.
Yeah, name any band, even before they were super big, like, whatever, bands you wouldn't expect, like Styx or Zappa or like any part of the map in any direction, And so Van was based in New York. He was based in the East Coast, and the story is his wife didn't want to live in New York anymore. She wanted to go to California. She wanted to be a West Coast girl. Yeah. And Van said, yeah. And some of his New York crew didn't want to move out. And one of them was the guitar player. And so they called, their management called Bill Graham and said, hey, we're looking for a new guitar player for the band. And, one thing led to another. And Ronnie got his shot, and he took his shot, and he hit the bullseye. And boom, he was in Van Morrison doing the Tupelo Honey record. Yeah. Which is known as Van's rock album because Ronnie Montrose was the guy playing it.
Right.
So, and check out that record. It's really phenomenal.
Classic
really
Van
phenomenal.
Morrison, no doubt.
So, there he is. And as you said, next came the Edgar Winter Group. He was asked to join that. And what a band to be asked to join.
Oh, my God.
What a talent Edgar is. And all the musicians and engineers and everybody he surrounded himself. Another super detailed oriented, dare I say, OCD kind of guy. Everything he did musical was just so perfect, perfected, for its time. And those guys you could see got along magnificently. And
like you say, not only, Chuck Ruff in there playing drums.
Chuck Ruff, exactly.
Dan Hartman, the late great Dan Hartman. What a talent, man! That guy writing, playing bass, singing lead on Free Ride.
Yeah,
Rick
what an
Derringer
insane band.
Around producing, and and of course Johnny and Edgar Winter. I mean, super iconic coming out of Texas, playing their blues rock. It just from that album cover to Frankenstein, it just blew everybody's mind, man. 73, 74 era. And it led to the formation.
And I'm the American Jimmy Page guy now. He was confident, and Sam up in that whole bubbling Bay Area thing, which was, as you know, the guys from Santana who
Yeah.
became Journey. Some of them became Journey, and there was Eddie Money hanging around. Sam was hanging around.
Mhm.
Ronnie was kicking around town. You had the Airplane, um,
The Dead. I mean,
the Dead. It was just a plethora of a music scene up there. Probably, and it's much more than L.A. Before L.A. started booming a little later on, with the exception of the Doors, and so it was the scene, man. It was the scene, and he was right in the middle of it. And so
yeah,
I learned all this
Sammy.
stuff through stories from him. He just kind of related stuff to me,
Sure.
not like we're doing, just sort of stacking up the history, but I just hear bits and pieces over the years.
Right.
Van used to say to me, and Ronnie would do his Scottish accent and do Van and tell me the story. I can't do it. I'm not going to try. But it's through all that stuff I was like, holy fuck, this guy was right in the melting pot as it was coming together.
Yeah. And of course,
Early
Sammy being
70s, man.
from Sammy was from Fontana, the Inland Empire, a
Yeah,
broken
yeah,
home of alcoholic father who was a boxer and used to kick
yes,
ass out on the streets and end up in jail at night. And his family not his mom not sure where the next meal was coming from, and headed to the greener pastures of the Bay Area to make his musical mark. So it's
that's right.
pretty
And if
amazing.
you haven't read it, I know you have, I can tell you have, but if
Yes,
you guys out there haven't read it, you got to get Sammy's book.
sure.
Uh, I read very few of those, but I needed to read Sam's because of everything he was sort of saying to me here and there about stuff, and
Yeah.
all the controversy about what really happened between him and Eddie and between him and Ronnie. And
Yeah.
yeah, so pick up Sam's book. It's amazing.
Yeah, no doubt.
Um,
Red.
yes, yes. So
That's
I wasn't aware. All those
that's
Montrose
amazing.
fans and people in California were just kind of waiting for Ronnie to come back, because I don't know if you're aware of this, but over the years, he really didn't want to go out and play stuff like Rock Candy live, even at his own
Yeah, I mean,
shows.
look at
He didn't
Open
want to do it.
Fire. He's playing between Journey and Van Halen, and he's
Yeah,
playing this fusion stuff,
absolutely.
And a
But
lot
the
of
thing
Van
is,
Halen fans are expecting Rock the Nation, Space Station #5.
oh, absolutely. And he just wanted to lean away from that. I think, he struggled in his own mind with the fact that he didn't want to be beholden to anybody else except himself, and, you know, in the Montrose camps, Sam was a bona fide star and well deserved. And I would have loved to have seen what would have happened if they would have continued, as would like all Montrose fans.
Yeah,
But Ronnie wanted to do it on his own. And by the time we met up, he had aged gracefully, and he was a different guy, I guess, because he didn't mind sharing the spotlight. And he was like, Keith, this is how the band works. It's a triangle, and the singer's right at the point. That's the focal point of the band. And I'm like, and I appreciated that. But then over the years, I started learning, he, I don't know what to say about that. But
yeah. Well,
I
he
appreciate my time with him, and I learned so much from the guy. And he's such an innovator of just how guitars sound. If you go and put that record on right now,
yeah,
the sound of the guitar will surprise you, because it's so in your face and it's so right. It's so right for that music. You're just like, wow. It's like when you hear, it's like when you
timeless.
hear a singer. Yeah, you hear a
Over 50
singer.
years ago, it was made.
You hear a singer and you feel like you're in the room. Like there is no trick behind this recording. I was just listening to "Save All Your Love" by Jack Russell and Great White, the original track that they made.
Yeah,
And I'm listening to it going, there is nothing on his voice. There's just nothing. That was, I'm sure they used a great mic, great studio mic, but it just sounds like he's singing through any mic, and he's cleaning up with it, man. I'm like, this dude, and that's how Ronnie's guitar was back then. It was just, there it is, and it just sounds amazing. And so anyway, maybe we should delve a little into the Ronnie
yeah,
Montrose Remembered thing
yeah,
if you want
yeah.
to.
Of course, coming up Friday night, June 24th, the Anaheim House of Blues. Man, what a legendary venue! Right down the street from the NAMM show.
Well, it's not that far off. It's actually January 24th,
Oh, what
in
did
about a
I
week and a
say?
half. And
Yeah, no, it's coming right up, January
it's at
24th.
House of Blues Anaheim, which is less than a mile away from the convention center. And it's doors are at 6. There's 2 amazing openers, and then we get going about 7:30 with the Ronnie Montrose Remembered. And we kind of go through. It's probably the only show that's ever happened that's gone through all of um, Ronnie's different bands and albums and the music that he's done. Because we do the Van Morrison, a few different Van Morrisons. We do Edgar Winter. We do, of course, the first Montrose record in its entirety, some of the second record. We do some of his solo instrumental stuff, Town Without Pity, of course, and a bunch of stuff. We got stuff from Open Fire. We do Gamma material. So we kind of try to honor the man, from every side and every angle of his colors and flavors. But,
Amazing.
it definitely, the heart of the night is definitely the rock section with that first record going. I mean,
Well, that's what I got to ask you. There is a revolving cast. You have a lot of regulars, but how do you decide each year? Because I know there's a lot of people like, I want to do, Bad Motor Scooter. I want to do Rock Candy. Put me down for Rock the Nation. How do you spread it out? How do you figure out who goes where in this puzzle?
well, you just work it. If there's been a few guys that were suited to do a certain song, and one guy did it last year, then we scoot over and we shuffle around the next year. And in the very beginning, I know I heard stories that Brad Gillis and Mark Bonilla, if you're aware of him,
Love Mark, sure.
yeah, I love Mark too. They were I heard that they were walking around sort of like poking at each other. Hey, I'm playing that this year. No, I'm playing that. And blah, blah, blah. You can play it next year, fool. I've got, it's like there's this rivalry going on between these guys that grew up with Ronnie's kind of sort of Bay Area fatherhood, if you may, as a guitar player. Guys like Brad and guys like, say, the guys in Tesla. I mean, they got produced in their younger years by Ronnie
And all those
as they were coming up. Their demos, Ronnie helped them out. I mean, he was that kind of guy. And so he was the big bad guitar player that kind of, helped these guys get inspired to play what they've played in their stuff, and eventually helped them in the studio. And so to them, it was a really big deal. It was really part of their youth and part of what they were made of, to come out and represent those songs. So, that's something I hadn't realized until we did the Ronnie Montrose Remembered. And, I developed a whole new appreciation, for a side of Ronnie's legacy that I really was unaware of. Because like I said, I didn't grow up in the Bay Area, as far away in the U.S. as you can get, out on Eastern Long Island. So, when these guys were like kind of chesting up to each other going, no, dude, watch out, it's me. I was like, wow, this is pretty wild. But as far as Bad Motor Scooter goes, that is usually it's our jamboree at the end of the night.
Okay.
And start out with 4 or 5 half stacks and guitar players on stage. And when the beginning of it comes in, it's got that motorcycle rev up in the beginning.
Sure.
Whoever's going to play the slide part. First year, I think that slide was Gilby, and Gilby rolled up with, a big fat cigar in his slide and played a little slide bit, and then went into the beginning, and, one year Hannon did that thing. And, what happens next is the drum does a little fill, and bam, when they come down on the downbeat, it sounds like there's a gigantic swarm of bees, like guitar bees. Count. It's just huge, and it's simple enough that it translates. It's not like just noise. You can still hear the part totally, but it's phenomenal. So
famously, when Ronnie came to the Bay Area and heard Ronnie was looking for a guitarist, Sammy knocks on his door, and Ronnie,
Yeah.
You got some songs? And he pulls in his back pocket like a cassette or something. Yeah, I got some songs, man. And Bad
Yeah, no,
Mountain
Sam
Swimmers
was a
is the first
badass.
song he ever wrote.
He was a badass, you know, and he did have some songs. And because he did, and Ronnie had what ideas he had, and the band just kind of jammed out Rock Candy in the studio, and it came together. I mean, their record came together super fast. I think it was something like 14 days. Um,
Yeah.
them in the studio putting together that record, and
Ted
that's
Templeman and Sunset Sound, man. It doesn't get any
Sunset Sound.
direct than that.
Yeah, man. I mean
Those
that
drums,
Sunset
Denny
Sound.
Carmassie's drums on that is like the American John Bonham. I mean, it is
Absolutely.
an American standard.
And he got coined as that. You know, he kind of, whether he was happy about it or not, I mean, he got coined with that for the rest of his career. And and it's no accident. I mean, Ronnie would tell you straight up. I mean, Denny was screwing around and started playing When the Levee Breaks. I mean, that's you can't really hide that. You know, it is what it is. You know, and but then they started varying it, and it once that riff popped out, I mean, they wanted to turn it into something. They knew they had something. So yeah, that Sunset Sound Studio 2 has become like or it had become back then, the famous drum room, probably the best drum room in existence ever for rock drums. So, you know, that was another stroke of luck. And you mentioned Ted Templeman, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but Ronnie met Ted during his tenure with Van Morrison.
Oh, sure. Warner Brothers.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, no, and Ted was a keyboard player, but he was also producing bands, you know, down in LA. And Van had offered him to produce his next record without even hearing any of the bands he had produced. He just liked the guy that much. He had a feeling about him. And
yeah, Ted used to be in the band Harper's Bazaar back in the 60s.
That's right. That's right, man. You know much that's hidden, Grasshopper.
Absolutely. This is my life. But yeah, the music that spawned out of Ted and Sunset Sound and Montrose and leading to Paper Money, and of course I Got the Fire. That's got to be a standout in the set. And
that's a big one. That was my favorite song at first when we started playing. You know, when I first learned Ronnie's music, I'm like, and you know, I like to belt up high in that range. So it just, that song just felt like we were on fire, man. I mean, that song just wailing. And it kind of sounded a little bit like my own St. John band stuff, to be honest with you, which was bizarre and a weird coincidence. I almost had that song in my own writing, in my repertoire. So it's one of the first songs I shot out there. I demoed with my first band that came to LA after I was working on that record. So
and as far as the post-Sammy era, the Warner Brothers presents Montrose and Jump on It. What can we expect from those?
You know, I actually had the second Montrose singer, Bob James, out to one of these events.
Okay.
Sadly, in the last few years, he passed.
Right.
But for years, people couldn't find him. And they were trying to get a hold of him, and I couldn't find him. And I finally, through a guy, you're familiar with Rat, the original bass player, Juan Crucier,
yes,
when they were younger, had a band with Bob James around town.
Wow.
And he was able to get a hold of him for me. And Bob was a little skeptical of coming out and getting together. But once we got together, we got on so well and kind of really opened up, and we became pretty good friends. And then he was happy to come down, and he's done one of these Ronnie Montrose Remembered events. And we did 20 Flight Rock, which was probably got the most radio play out of all their songs
right.
on that record.
Sure.
And
Jack Douglas produced Jump on It, of course, known for Aerosmith and
yeah,
Thurs and all those great records. John Lennon, Cheap Trick.
Yeah, and I mean, there's more crazy stuff. I mean, I had a long relationship with James Kotak, the drummer from the
Yeah,
Scorpions, and
rest in
only to
peace.
find out,
We love James. He was such
rest in
a
peace, James.
character.
Only to find out later that he actually wrote some songs on the last album they did under the Montrose moniker, which was Mean.
Yes.
And James played that record, played drums, and he also wrote a few songs on that record, which was really interesting to me because another coincidence of somebody who was kind of glued in my life since the moment I set foot in LA. How it all kind of fit together like a puzzle. At the end of the day, it was just mind blowing. But Ronnie Montrose Remembered. For those of you who aren't aware of what the NAMM convention is, it's the National Music Merchants Convention. It's been going on since, what do you think, Jay, since the 60s?
Before that, man, it's got a real history. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I
So
call
you
it the
had
Super Bowl of music gear.
Yeah. Well, back in the day, I'm sure it was like, George Martin and Thomas Dolby and, Keith Olsen hanging out when they were kids,
it was more a lot of horns and, pianos and things like that in the early days, music
Sure.
retailers and, the stores that supplied the equipment to all the schools. There used to be music in schools, if you can imagine that, where in school, besides the marching band, you had like an orchestra and you had all these school programs where you could, rent a, check out an instrument and get to know it and take it home and practice it. And so many of our fellow musicians came up that way, playing in school. And NAMM was the convention that brought all the manufacturers and stores together. But yeah, real rich history. And we're so glad it's back in January, after the dreaded COVID, it was like in June, and March, and it never quite worked like it does in January. It's the beginning of the year. Most acts aren't on tour yet. It's Anaheim. Who doesn't want to be, in Disneyland territory? And it's just magical. It's everybody's there, and I know you put the word out every year, and must be incredible to get all these hell yeah, fuck yeah, I'm in, I'm there.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's music, people. There's a love for it, in the rock community because it was part of what shaped it. It really was, and especially for the guitar players, but for everybody too. As you say, Denny Carmassi, he's a monster in the business and very influential, and kind of, he got pegged with that kind of, American John Bonham kind of guy. And, a lot of musicians
Hart on all those big 80s records with Anna Nancy Wilson, Howard Leese, and
he did.
Mark Andrews.
He did.
I mean, I saw them live. I saw Montrose the last tour Sammy did, early 74 in Dayton, Ohio, and they opened for JoJo Gunn.
Yeah, that's right.
Spirit.
I heard about that.
Ferguson.
Absolutely.
That's a hell of a show, man. I'm like, who the fuck are these guys? Of course, everybody knew "Run, Run, Run" by JoJo Gunn.
Yes, that's right. You're dating yourself now.
There was a famous during School's Out. Alice Cooper did a show at the Hollywood Bowl right up the street, and it was Alice Cooper, JoJo Gunn, and Captain Beyond. Is that a great set or what?
Yeah. No, I remember Ronnie telling me about that show. Yeah, absolutely, man.
But yeah, no, I know it's a depth of material, all honoring one Ronald Montrose. Can you give away some of our special guests who might attendees be seeing on stage that night?
Absolutely. For those just tuning in, we're actually here talking about the Ronnie Montrose Remembered event this January 24th, Friday, near the NAMM convention, less than a mile away at the House of Blues Anaheim. And some of the players will include members of the band Last in Line, for example, Great White, Jack Russell's Great White, White Snake, Ace Frehley Band, Ted Nugent Band, Megadeth, Ozzy Osbourne, Alice Cooper. Now, these are members of. Sure. Alice is not shown, neither is Ozzy, but
understood.
different band members
Yeah,
over the years.
the
I'm just naming
the
stuff
core
real quick.
musicians.
Lorraine Lewis from Femme Fatale and Vixen, she'll be
Yep.
there actually, believe it or not. She has a really cool spot for a female singer, a couple of spots there. Mitch Perry from the Edgar Winter Group, he was with Edgar Winter for about
Yeah.
10 years. He's a great
Mitch has
friend of
played
the
with
show.
everybody.
He's a great friend of the show. Well, I mean, but that stuff is his wheelhouse. That Edgar, that early 70s style stuff, I mean, Mitch really, really shines on that. And yes, Mitch played on half the albums that came out of LA in the 80s. He's a hell of a player. And when he plays this stuff, it's no exception. So we got, I'm naming a few individual people because they're unique kind of people. Miles Shawn, who's actually Neil's son, who I met on a tour I did for Neil in his band. And, excuse me, it was the first time that Neil ever had his son come out and play with him. And Miles is a well-known Bay Area circle guitar player, session player, live player. He's a burner just like his dad. He's phenomenal. And anytime he's around and in the same town I'm in, I'm like, come over and play a song with us, dude. You got to come over. And same for him. And he's fantastic. He's a younger dude, but he grew up like an older school dude.
I mean, could you imagine your dad being Neil Sean? I mean, come on.
Well, it's just, I mean, the apple doesn't fall far. So, I mean, you can tell Miles spent, did the Eddie and Neil thing and, sat in a room for 16 hours a day for however many years of his life and he already had that natural penchant and natural talent. And so he'll be there and he's a phenomenal guy. Who else we got? We've got several people who did play with Ronnie over the years, either in his instrumental works or in one version or another of Montrose. I got a guy from the Cult. There's a couple guys from the Robbie Krieger band who are absolutely phenomenal. When you're one of the Doors, the level of people that you have at your disposal is pretty much everybody. And, when he handpicks guys to be the guys to go out with him and play that Doors music, it's phenomenal. Ty Dennis is one of them. He's the drummer. I was on an interview with Trunk sometime in this past year, and I happened to be on a spot back to back with Alex Lifeson, so I was hearing some of their interview, and then we actually got to chime in a little bit. And Alex was talking about Ty Dennis because when he comes to LA, Ty is the guy he calls to do his writing with and get him in the studio. So I'm like, man, it's a small world. And so he's a phenomenal drummer, of course. And keyboard player Ed Roth, who does the Ray Manzarek bit and his own bit as well in Robbie's band, will be there. Ed Roth is the guy who introduced me to Ronnie. He was a session cat that played on mine and Doug Aldridge's album, the first Burning Rain record, and some subsequent stuff too. But during the first record, he was the guy who said, I got someone who needs to meet you, and he's the guy who introduced us. And he's played every one of these so far. He headed up Ronnie's, kind of the way I headed up Ronnie's Montrose band in a way. He kind of let me, he'd say, Keith, we need to do this. Can you do it? And I'd, kind of get it done. And Ed was that guy in Ronnie's instrumental band. So when he wanted to go out and play Open Fire and Town Without Pity and all those songs, they did it under kind of Ed's wing. He would get those guys together. So Ed and I were like on opposite sides of Ronnie for a long time, a lot of years. For me, it was about 12 years. I think for Ed, it was a little longer. And, we got to know each other that way. And since we've been doing this, these events since 2016, it's been a labor of love. And, we've really gotten to know each other. And almost everybody I'm naming, they're really sweet people. They're like salt of the earth, the people that you want to know. Every one of these people is like the hero in the movie that you want to see, catch the golden snitch, and they did catch it, kind of a thing.
Yeah, they're like the clutch players. It's fourth down. You're down
Yeah,
by 6 points. You got 20 seconds to go in the game. Who you going to throw the ball to or hand it to, or who you going to have, block for the star running back? They're just clutch.
absolutely. One of my heroes, first coming into the clubs on Long Island, a gentleman by the name of Randy Jackson. He's the singer, guitar player, songwriter from the band Zebra.
Sure.
And if now that's a band is the opposite of Montrose. That's a band that is huge in the East Coast, Northeast tri-state area.
Yeah.
Uh,
Originally
they
from New
actually,
Orleans, actually.
yeah, they actually grew up. You should call this show Jay Knows. I mean, that would be a good name for your show.
There you go.
It's true. It's like stump the J.
Yeah,
So yeah, even though they cut their teeth in New Orleans, it wasn't until they came up to Long Island, specifically Long Island, that they just blew up. I mean, those guys were selling out the OBI South, which holds like 3,500 people, without an opening act as a club band.
yeah. It
Doing
was one of the fastest selling debut albums in Atlantic Records history. Atlantic Records had a
unbelievable.
lot of icons.
Unbelievable. So Randy will be playing this year, and I'm really excited about
That's
that.
awesome.
I mean, that's for me. He's a hometown hero. They were gone before I, was even in a rock club. But the older guys who were hiring me as I came up, they were like, "Well, this is what we got to do," and they named like, "This is what Twisted did, and this is what Zebra did," because those were the big Long Island legendary club bands who got signed, out of the clubs. Um, who else we got? Soren Anderson's a guy who's never played it before, and he just joined up, and he's Glenn Hughes's guitar player.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with Soren.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's got a long history
I
as
love
well.
that tribute that Glenn does every night to Tommy Bolin. Come taste the
Yeah,
band. The only album without Richie Blackmore in the original, Deep Purple run, and Glenn Hughes and David Coverdale on that.
yeah,
It sends shivers up my spine every time I hear him launch into Getting Tighter, or one of those great songs with Tommy Bolin.
phenomenal music, man. Yeah, I once I was kind of converted to a rock guy, because I was kind of classical music guy and other things around the New York area, because there's opera and there's jazz and there's Broadway tunes, Rodgers and Hammerstein, and everything else going on there too. So, but once I was like thoroughly cemented as, okay, you're a singer now. Glenn Hughes and early Coverdale were a big part of my listening repertoire, like every day, as I was like just learning where this was coming from, and I'm glad I did, because that was the right stuff to listen to. I mean, Glenn is, God bless him, man. He's singing better than ever right now. I just saw him play in the fall down, actually, where we're going to play in House of Blues.
That's
with Ed Roth on keyboards and Soren Anderson on guitar that night.
Well, Glenn be the first one to tell you he shouldn't be alive. He did so much coke back in the late 70s, early 80s. Tommy Bolin didn't survive, but, Glenn somehow did. And being sober, his voice is stronger than ever. Like you say, he's like the voice of rock.
He is the voice of rock. And I mean, in a lot more ways than just saying it. I mean, without naming any of them, Glenn ghosted vocals on so many young bands coming out of California, and to give them either ideas or a footprint for the whole song, for the melody. I mean, he just comes from a school that is you can't beat it. It's the original blues rock style. I don't even know how to put it. And sometimes now I'm thinking this needs a really badass blues lick. Let me think about Glenn Hughes. He's the first person I think about.
Yeah.
And Glenn, you could tell he has that sort of Stevie Wonder influence.
Oh yeah.
When you first hear him. So of course I've gone back through Stevie's entire catalog as well.
Yeah, he's got a deep soul and funk and R&B appreciation, and you hear it in Come Taste the Band. You heard it in Stormbringer, Black was like, man, it's getting too funky in here. It's like, and of course, all those solo records that Glenn has done with Chad Smith and the Chili Peppers.
Yes.
They get funky.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I love the Chili Peppers, man. I love what they do. I love the whole unique niche they carve for themselves. That's what I dig. I mean, people
Sure.
used to say, "Oh, everything's been written. Nothing more can be written." I'm like, Chili Peppers. Like there was nothing anywhere near that before they
Yeah,
did
they
it.
carved their own
And there's
niche.
a million more things still in between. It's just we, we became imitators. America became imitators of everything, and I don't know. In a way, it works out really good for that whole footprint of rock that already happened. From the
Yeah.
Baroque to the Romantic, to the classical to the 20th century rock style stuff. That stuff at this point, I think, is going to rule. That stuff's going to live on forever.
Well, no doubt. I mean,
Zeppelin is the new Mozart, and you're going to see Zeppelin shows at the Forum less than 20 years from now. That's going to
yeah.
be what you're going to go
Well,
see.
that's it. I always say the music of the 70s is the blueprint for everything great after. Anytime you hear a great new band now, oh man, they got that Zeppelin feel, or they sound like AC/DC, or they got that Deep Purple vibe, or it's got that Ronnie Montrose sound. I mean, they always get compared, but more importantly, that music will live on forever. And
Now, I want to point out to those listeners who are coming to the Ronnie Montrose Remembered event on January 24th at the House of Blues Anaheim
Friday
around the
night,
NAMM convention. Friday night, I want to point out to you guys that the name Ronnie Montrose is a bit of a tongue twister. And as Jay caught himself, I wanted to say, don't worry about it, man. I mean, I've heard that a million times. I mean, I've seen clips of, some of his older days, and someone would announce him, and even the announcer would get tongue tangled, like a DJ.
it is, it
Monty
is.
Rontros, or
Yeah,
just
just Montrose alone was,
I don't
enough.
know
That's all
why.
you needed. No
So
first name needed.
saying, you guys at home, just say it. Ronnie Montrose remembered. Ronnie Montrose remembered. Try to say that. So,
RMR.
oh
It's
boy.
it's such a pleasure to get the inside scoop on the man that puts it together every year. Is such a force. I look forward to helping you any way I can, being a part of it. We'll bring the acts on. We'll give little tidbits of information. We'll help coordinate it all and give it to you, the viewer. The attendees are going to remember this show forever. It's going to be a mind blowing event Friday night. It is Anaheim House of Blues. And whether you go to the NAMM show or not, come on down. I'm on up from San Diego, wherever you're from. But if you're at NAMM, it is the most happening thing on Friday night. So come on down to the legendary House of Blues and prepare to get your mind blown. Our special guest has been the one and only Keith St. James. He is, I mean, Keith
St.
St.
John.
John. Look at this. Talk about tongue twisters. You got me with a Lonnie
Well, I don't know if
Montrose
John
song.
is actually that much of a tongue twister, but I'll give that one to
Yeah,
you.
yeah, Keith St. John, and it is. You were talking about Bob James. That's probably what got me on that
Could have
J.
been. Yeah, that actually makes sense. That's a good save, Jay.
Yeah, and Ed
I
Roth.
want
I
to tell you
mean,
guys
David
that
Lee Roth. It's all like 1 degree of separation here. But come on down. Doors open at 6, so get there early. Couple nice openers, and then boom, here comes the main event. And
yeah, to
Keith,
give you guys some more information, we'll be doing, if you are going to the NAMM show or the NAMM convention and you're going to be in the convention center, we will be at booth 4234, which is right next to the Ellefson Coffee booth.
yes,
That's owned by David Ellefson of Megadeth, who's also playing at
Riot
RMR.
Stitch,
But
and
right
look,
next to that booth 4234, we will be doing a Ronnie Montrose Remembered Players signing at 3 o'clock on Thursday. That's Thursday, January 23rd, 3 o'clock p.m., booth 4234, giving you time to get your pen and write this down.
yes,
I
we'll
should have had it.
provide
I
some
should have had
links.
a card there,
Yeah,
but
no,
cut that.
24th, and all roads lead to Anaheim. Keith,
Let
thank
me
you
do
so
that.
much.
Let me do that bit one more time.
Okay.
Let me do that bit. Let me get that up. Thanks. For you guys that are actually coming to the NAMM convention and going to be inside the convention, the Ronnie Montrose Remembered players and myself are going to be doing a signing this year at booth 4234. That's right next to Ellefson Coffee, of which David Ellefson, of course, is a player in Ronnie Montrose Remembered. And he was also in Montrose with me for a few years in my 12-year tenure. So we'll be doing a signing at booth 4234. We've got a link below. So with the time, it's 3 p.m. on Thursday, the day before our show. So love to see you there. We've got T-shirt giveaways. We're going to sign everything we've got. We don't normally do this, but we've got a lot of love going on in the convention center this year, and we want to come in and give you guys as much as we can. I've got so much stuff left over from the past years, and I want to come in and sign it for you guys and give it away. So come on down and get some of that.
Well, we can't wait. Everybody head to NAMM. That's Thursday at 3, and the booth number right below. And, of course, House of Blues Anaheim Friday night. It will be the epicenter of the rock nation. That is for sure. Our special guest, Keith St. John.
Well said, my friend. Yeah, thank you.
Ronnie Montrose Remembered. Keith, thank you so much. Keep it up. You do such an amazing job. Can't wait to help you throw it down. Let's do it, brother.
I can't wait to sing these songs again, man, with all these other great singers. Got a lot of other great singers coming this year, too. So look forward to seeing you there, Jay. Look forward to seeing you guys there. Ronnie Montrose Remembered. Get there.